Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast, hosted by Enterprise Management Associates. As a leading IT analyst firm, we provide deep insights across IT and data management technologies. In this podcast, we explore how automation drives business processes, analytics, development, and infrastructure. Join hosts Dan Twing and Tom O'Rourke as they discuss the evolving automation landscape, share strategies to optimize your tools, and guide strategic decisions for your automation portfolio. Now, let's dive into the world of automation excellence.
Hello, and welcome to the Enterprise Automation Excellence Podcast. I'm Dan Twing. I'm here with my co-host, Tom O'Rourke. And today we thought we would talk about the orchestration craze. You'll hear this word a lot around automation. Certainly, you may have heard about Gartner's SOAP, or Services Orchestration and Automation Platforms. They introduced this name a few years ago and have written some papers about it. And most recently, they've now done a quadrant on that topic. So I think their name and that phrase is certainly here to stay. And I thought it would be interesting to discuss what's the shift from workload automation to orchestration. What does that really mean? Why now? And how does that impact, someone working as a leader in automation in an enterprise? So orchestration, of course, is this coordination among automation tools, is kind of how I think about it. In some ways, these tools have always been orchestrators. Tom, back in the day, the IBM product carried the name Maestro, even before they named it Tivoli and eventually IBM Workload Scheduler. And it's got a long history because that product's been around a long time. But the original name was Maestro. Maestro, conductor, orchestra, orchestration, right? It's kind of always been here in these products. From your perspective, Tom, what's really shifted? Why is orchestration a focus now when we can point to some of those same characteristics existing in these products for a long time?
I think there are several things that have taken place over time with this. I think that there is a push to be able to manage increasingly complex processes within the organization. And simultaneously from that, IT has evolved from managing single servers, managing a mainframe that sat in a data center, into a ecosystem that includes the servers and other equipment that belong directly to the organization, the resources that may be leased or used elsewhere, the virtualized resources that are available through a cloud, the services that are being provided using a third party's equipment, that all of these things are happening in support of many, many different business processes within the organization. So batch and cron started when you were focused on, I just need to make sure this machine does the right things at the right time. And now the orchestra conductor, needs to stand and take a global look and make that all happen as well.
It's interesting you used that analogy with the conductor. It's like, if you think back to the more simpler times, you were maybe coordinating a 4-piece or a smaller orchestra, right? And now there's so many more instruments, there's so many more parts being played. And there are holistic automation tools that do very specialized things that you want to bring to bear, but they do their thing and they're not aware of all of it. So I think that the increasing role of orchestration is that we're now stringing together a lot of very specialized tools across a very complex environment. The need to coordinate all that went up, and that the actual task or automation work really shifted farther away from these tools into specialized tools, but the need to be aware of all of that is increasing.
Right. And I think there has also been a expansion around the expectations of automation. That automation was initially about reducing the need for manual operations. Over time, that moved on to improved reliability and efficiency. And now the automations are core to improving the user experience and supporting the digitalization and transformation initiatives that are taking place inside of many businesses right now as they evolve into this new world.
Right. And so when we think about how the underlying changes that have raised this have happened, they didn't happen overnight. They've been happening for the last 20 years, right? And these tools that we historically called workload automation have been doing a lot of this orchestration work along the way. But I think we're catching up with the realization that a lot has actually changed. They're just small little changes over time. But now that we can step back and go, look at how different managing automation is today with the complex undercarriage, the specialized tools, and now we bring in AI and the ability to actually make some decisions and have some increased capability of self-awareness in these systems. It changes the role of the need of that orchestrator, but it was really kind of always there.
I think you're right. I think this is a journey that's been underway for a long time. My shorthand for this has always been that orchestration is the delegation to another more focused scheduler, the ability to go and hand off to the SAP scheduler the set of tasks that are associated with some business function. And as you know, that's been around for 20 years now in some of the what were tools that were called job schedulers and are now referred to as workload automation tools. I think we've kind of watched these tools evolve to meet the business needs, and with then develop the perspective that perhaps the word orchestration is best to use for the tools that have gone and reached these new levels.
Right. And so, in terms of what does that mean as you think about the future for automation, I think we'll continue to see these more specialized tools. And take release management, for example, is one area where I've talked with people who aren't as familiar with this topic, and they're like, well, if you have infrastructure as code tools and you have CI/CD tools for DevOps, why do you need this automation tool in the mix? And it's like, okay, imagine a major release. You're going to push a major release. What's required in that if you've worked in IT, right? You've got all the planning that goes with it. And yes, you could take all those actions in a manual fashion, but you don't get the same predictability as when you work it out in development and then you run it through test, and then each time you create the environment with the same, maybe more complex and scaled larger, but the steps are all defined and repeatable with the automation. And when you're pushing a change, that's one thing to think about. But where I've found when I'm talking to folks who aren't as familiar with this topic, it's like, okay, now imagine you find out 10 minutes in that you've broke something in the process, right? You need to revert back very fast. And there's an awful lot of complexity and opportunities. There's just no way you could do a rollback like that, right? Without having it written down and automated. And that's just one little area where, this kind of tool has seen a rise in use. Releases didn't always get coordinated through these tools, but I've seen more and more infrastructure config and release management are almost as much work for these tools as all of the old just basic batch scheduling used to be. The need for orchestration comes out when you go, okay, undo all that very quick without something to control it.
Yes, and the core attributes of automation to improve reliability and to improve efficiency have become more important. We've moved beyond, okay, let's go and update this application on a single server, to needing to coordinate global rollouts, to be able not only to push the updated code out there, but to push new database schemas out with it, push out supporting information to the edge servers that are going to be used in order to access the help and other support documents along the way. That these processes move beyond the capabilities of a single tool, and you can choose to coordinate them manually. You can choose to write your own custom mechanisms to coordinate them, or you can look at some of the automation tools that have evolved in this space and go and let them do it on your behalf, because they're well tested over the years that they have evolved from when they first appeared to automate distributed system management.
Well, I think one of the manifestations of this shift is seen in the flurry of integrations, right? We've seen over the last few years. The idea that you have to coordinate, with all of these different tools means you have to have a means to interact with them. And of course, APIs have come up and been matured, and we know the technical means to do it, but any given tool has an awful lot of endpoints to talk to these days, right? And we've seen over the last couple of years just a race to integrate with everything. And I think that's one outcome of, as you start to recognize it's an orchestrator, you start to need to want to interact with all those different piece parts. And it's a lot to get those integrations in place. And I think we're well down the road now. Most of these tools have a lot of them. They continue to do them, but that will continue to be a driving factor here, because if you're trying to orchestrate across a broader set of environments and software, then you have to be integrated with all those things. And so, if you don't think this shift is happening, just look to the number of integrations that are available, and yet the wish list of those that are not yet available.
I look at it a little differently. I don't think we're going to see any one tool that will offer out of the box integrations with everything. I think it instead goes back to the model of finding the right places to be able to go and delegate from your central automation tool to the mechanisms within a platform, whether you're looking at a cloud platform vendor, whether you're looking at a SaaS CRM solution or something else. I don't think that automation tools are going to move inside of the SAP ERP solutions and micro-manage the individual steps inside. Rather, they're going to build interfaces to the SAP scheduling mechanisms and work their magic there.
Right. As you think about the go forward, if I'm a leader in an enterprise around automation, what does this mean to me? The first thing that jumps out for me is, as soon as there's a quadrant on this topic, there's going to be, other executives, inquiries. You're likely going to be asked about orchestration if, from some others who are familiar with the topic. So you certainly need to have a position on it. You need to understand it. And also what tools you have and what orchestration capabilities are already built into them, because the name may have only been around for a few years, or we've been really raising the profile on the term orchestration, but the function has really been in some of these tools to a large extent, particularly over the last 5 to 7 years. So you may already be using a tool that has quite a bit of those capabilities. So understanding that, then how would that change the way you approach the next automation, how you organize your team, how you interact with the rest of the business units? I mean, what do you think about, Tom, when you think about someone in that role addressing and dealing with this sort of shift and the attention it's going to get? Because obviously with the automation is getting a lot of attention across the company these days, right? Across an enterprise.
I think first, having an understanding of how this term orchestration is being used, how it's being framed by Gartner, because that's obviously going to be reflected back in the questions that you may receive from your senior management or via the board of directors or elsewhere. I think it's also worth assessing, as a leader, does your charter require thinking bigger than the systems that you already manage? And, is there an opportunity to go and use the Gartner orchestration SOAP framework as a way to map out your automation coverage or the automation coverage that exists throughout your organization, to be able to identify gaps and duplicates and take action on those. But, at the same time, well, I'm sure that there are going to be vendors who are going to put new labels on, the product now includes improved SOAP. These capabilities have been inside the tools for a long time. And I think you have to take a viewpoint to whether or not the tool capabilities are, serving your existing needs, and whether there are, additional needs that these tools can go and provide for you in order to help your organization with its business goals.
Yeah, Tom. So, I'm in the process right now of planning my next piece of research in this area, and the focus will be pretty heavy around orchestration and really what's shifting there in terms of the use cases and the interactions. So, I'm anxious to hear how folks feel about, how much of this they're taking advantage of, how much more they think they can take advantage of it. Well, I'm going to have some data here later in the year here that's going to fill in the gaps for me, at least in terms of how people are relating to this. I mean, what had you seen as you were talking with customers and users? I mean, they're adapting this new thinking and approaching automation maybe a little differently.
I wouldn't frame it as differently, but rather looking for new opportunities to take advantage of the tools that they already have. And, a automation product manager, the feedback that came in on other use cases that they'd like to explore, and whether these capabilities were already in the tool or whether they were things that we could build for them so that they could go and take on some other opportunities that existed within their enterprise.
Right. So when you start to acknowledge orchestration, it certainly leads you to go, so what else can I orchestrate, right? It does open the mind to other use cases, which maybe are close with one minor tweak or one new integration. And now you have a whole nother area where you can apply the orchestration concept.
Fair enough. So I want to thank everybody who has joined us today. And as a reminder, if you want to, we'd love to hear your feedback and questions. The email address for that is eaepodcast@emausa.com. And the home for our new podcast is at em360tech.com. And, we hope that you've enjoyed this, and we look forward to talking with you further.
Thank you, Dan and Tom, for your insights on today's topic, and thanks to our listeners for joining the Enterprise Automation Excellence podcast. If you're a technology or operations leader looking to enhance your automation strategy, stay connected for more expert insights. Visit enterprisemanagement.com to learn how EMA can support your automation initiatives and check out more episodes for in-depth discussions and industry trends.